A project 6 months in the making, New York Magazine profiles 35 women who have accused Bill Cosby of sexual assault. Joining us is the person who wrote that article, New York Magazine's senior editor, Noreen Malone. Noreen, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
This is an incredible story. This is an incredible cover. Tell me how this all came about.
Well, our photo director, a woman named Jody Kwan, actually came up with the idea in about December. Hannibal Buress had done a bit on stage in Philadelphia saying, you know, Bill Cosby essentially is this great moralist, but he rapes women. And the bit went viral, and one by one, women started to come forward and to speak out at press conferences. They wrote op-eds, and they'd done it piecemeal, but Jody understood that putting everyone in one photograph on one cover would really have impact. And so we started contacting the women, and one by one they signed on to do it.
And did you have any difficulty in getting these women to pose for the cover, to talk about the struggle, the tribulations that they had to get their stories out there?
So these were women who had come forward publicly before. They'd already made the decision to talk about it. And so we weren't pressuring anyone into anything they didn't want to do. There were some women who took longer than others to decide to do it, but basically they all wanted their story heard. They were proud to have their story heard. They were proud to stand next to each other. I think that was a big thing for many of them, was that it wouldn't be them alone. They would have some kind of, it's not quite safety in numbers, but it's something like that.
Let's dive into this article because there's a lot of things in here that are very powerful, and I actually highlighted some of them. One of the points that you make in this story, how could this still be happening? You call it almost Old Testament biblical. What do you mean by that?
Right. Well, in that part of the article, I was actually referring to several years ago, there was a highly publicized rape in Steubenville, Ohio, and then another one in Missouri. These were captured on film. The girls were sort of ostracized for coming forward, and worse, in Missouri, the girl's house
burned down.
It was burned down. You know, that just the idea that, you know, a woman accusing a man of rape, that's the way it would be handled rather than listening to her side of the story. I think for many people who followed these news stories, it was really radicalizing, particularly young women, to see that this was still the power imbalance in America in, you know, at that time in 2013.
And you can see that because when I was a kid growing up, and you mentioned this in the article, there was the whole Take Back the Night, you know, there was sort of an awareness of sexual assaults, of rapes, and people coming forward, but it really didn't take when you see what you point out in Steubenville. And then so that's a case of these are just random kids in America, right? You're talking about one of the most powerful entertainment artists in the world being accused by women, most of them who are not famous, maybe perhaps, you know, a couple, Janet Dickinson, you know, but generally, these were not women that were very famous, and so people didn't believe them. Yeah,
there was a great power imbalance that was happening. A lot of the women who say that they were targeted by Cosby and assaulted by Cosby were aspiring models and actresses, and they say that their agent got in touch and said, oh, Mr. Cosby wants to mentor you. So you automatically, you walk into that situation with a power imbalance. And also at that time, like you said, people didn't really understand what the term date rape meant. These women had this experience, they say, and then they didn't have a way to process what had happened to them, and so they just felt a great deal of shame. Cosby said to some of them, allegedly, you know, no one will believe you.
No one will believe you.
You can come forward, but no one will.
Why speak up? You write it here. No one would believe you, so why speak up?
Right, right. And I think just really the same thing happened in 2005. Andrea Constand was a woman who sued Bill Cosby in 2005. There were a number of Jane Does who signed along to her lawsuit. Some of them went public. They talked to People magazine. And really the reaction against them was, oh, these women are looking to make a buck. And then fast forward 10 years later, and the reaction has really been, for the most part, I'm not saying there aren't trolls online. I'm not saying that some people out there, you know, aren't angry about this. But for the most part, people have been celebrating their decision to come forward.
Yeah. Objectively speaking, is it also somewhat frustrating, perhaps as a woman, outside of your role as a journalist, that it was Hannibal Buress, a comedian, a man who basically was doing a bit, and was almost a throwaway bit, in the middle of a stand-up routine that went viral, and now all of a sudden people are revisiting this story and are starting to believe these women who have been in the most case saying it for many, many years?
You know, I do know a couple of the women did say that they felt that way, but I don't think that was a throwaway bit on his part. I think he
calculated.
Yeah, well, I think he felt that strongly, and I think, you know, whether it's a woman or a man speaking out, he did some good.
There's a lot of people who are looking at this story now, and they're saying, and I read somewhere that one of the women said that, you know, when you talk about Bill Cosby going forward, he won't be, the first thought that pops into your mind will not be comedian. It will be serial rapist.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the other reasons that this took so long for, for this movement from these women to gain steam is that he's such a famous person. People feel so strongly about him. He's America's favorite TV dad. He is, hugely important to the Black community in America. But really what these women wanted, they didn't, the statute of limitations is up for most of them. They're not pursuing damages. They literally just want people to believe what they're saying. And that's part of what they are going for.
What was the most surprising aspect of this project for you?
So we interviewed all the women separately, and there were so many similarities in their stories. There was a pattern of behavior that these women are all alleging that, he took advantage of their ambitions and that he drugged their drinks and that they lost many hours. So simply seeing the pattern in the incidents themselves, but then also seeing the way that the women processed it similarly through the decades.
They all did the same. They sort of went through the same, this happened to me, I don't know who to talk to.
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone processed it at their own pace. Some people made peace with it more easily than others. Some people, had really tough lives, whether for this or for other reasons. But yes, they all said, I didn't know what to do back then, and now I've come to this place where I feel more powerful than he is.
Fantastic. It was fantastic. Article, fantastic reporting. You, Jody Kwan, the photo editor who decided to put this amazing cover out there, which I know has been burning up social media and traditional media, as well as Amanda Demi, who also wrote the article with you. Just great, great stuff. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.